Hi and welcome back to another CottageCutz YouTube video tutorial. This is Marla and today I have a bridge card featuring the new Australian animal die collection that's available now over in the Scrap and Cottage. I used 4 different dies from this collection. The first one is the Outback Trees. That die does come with 3 different trees and some foliage that are perfect to create scenes with. I'll use the Dingo, the Emu, and then of course there are the Kangaroos. That die set does come with 3 different kangaroos. I'm giving that die set away. In order for you to qualify, please make sure that you're subscribed, leave a comment, and like the video. I have an 8.5 by 11 piece of white cardstock. I'm cutting it on the 11-inch side to 5 inches. I'll flip it around, and on the 8.5-inch side I'm going to score one end at 1 inch and then again at 2 inches. I'm going to flip that panel around again. I'll score again at 1 inch and then I'll score at 2 inches. Those are going to be the flaps that will hold my bridge and will also help my card stand. So the inside score line is the 2-inch score line. I'm going to fold both ends of the card base towards the center, and then I'm going to reinforce those score lines with my bone folder. I'll take the 1-inch score line and I'm going to flip it to the outside, and those will be the areas where my bridge is going to hold on to. So here's my bridge. I do have this cut to 6 1/4 by, I think it's about 2 inches. It doesn't matter the height, you choose the height. Unfortunately, the way my scoreboard, or the way that my paper trimmer is the 6 1/4 and 6.5 inch marks are almost where the arm folds, and I always make mistakes with this, so I cut this a little bit short. So I will have all of the dimensions linked in the description box below. That hillside should actually be 6.5 inches, not 6 1/4 inches like I have, but I'm going to make it work. You can do your ink blending ahead of time before you do your scoring. It doesn't matter either way. You're not going to notice those deeper etchings where the ink has gathered at the score marks. I am using Distress Oxide ink in Rusty Hinge. If you've ever seen pictures of the Outback or Australia, you will know that their ground does have a clay consistency to it, which is why I thought the vintage photo with the Rusty Hinge was the perfect combination. I'm going to go with warm colors for this card. I'm going to keep it nice and summery and warm, and I just think that the oranges and the yellows really do represent the country of Australia really well in my mind, how I picture it. I'm going to add a little bit of that vintage photo to the bottom of my card base, and then we'll move along and I'll start on the sky. For the sky, I added the yellow tone instead of blues, as again I wanted to stick with those rich warm colors. This is, I believe it's Sweet Mustard from Pink Fresh Studio, and then I have a Tim Holtz stencil. Then I'm going to add some Pink Fresh Studio apricot ink over the top. I'll add a little bit of that apricot towards the bottom of the stencil once I lift it, so there's going to be a little bit of a gap between my sun rays and the ground, and I'll add a little bit of that apricot there just to make sure that it looks like the sun is rising. And then the left and the right side of my panel is a little bit splotchy, and I'm going to add a little bit more of that sweet mustard over on those areas just to blend everything out a little bit better and to get it blended a little bit better with my ground. I'm going to oxidize my ink as I like to do and splatter some water over the top by adding water into the palm of my hand, clapping over the top, and then I'll use my Ranger heat tool to dry this. I'm going to add my sentiment. I've placed it in my MISTI. This is a sentiment from my stash that I had cut apart. I felt like it was a little bit crooked. It ended up not being so, but rather than just practicing directly to my paper, I add a piece of acetate to the inside of my MISTI, make sure that it's straight, and then I remove the acetate. I'm going to ink my sentiment up with Memento Rich Cocoa ink, stamp it twice, and I like the way that this lined up. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, this is where I'm going to find out that this panel is a little bit short. And it's not short going across bridge-wise, but if I want to close my card, then it's short. And this is where I'm going to add some glue, wet glue over on the right side. I did use double-sided tape on the left, and I lined up the bridge portion with the bottom left-hand corner of my card. But as I close this keeps inching over to the right, and I decided to just go with it, roll with the punches, right? I can camouflage it. You can camouflage almost anything on a card, so this was easy peasy to camouflage. Once I finish with this, when it's closed, it's going to be about 6.5 inches wide by 5 inches tall, so you will need to put it into either a 5x7 envelope or create another envelope for this. I'm going to play around with some placement. Here's where I kind of wish I would have moved my sentiment over to the right a little bit more, just because I ended up having to move my kangaroo into a different position than what I was looking for, and I felt like maybe I would have balanced it a little bit better if the sentiment was more to the right. It still turned out really cute, but I just, you know, hindsight's 20/20 when you make a mistake, right? I'm going to add the emu to the back, and then I will add the largest tree in the very back. So I'm going to start gluing things down. I'm going to glue my tree down. I always make sure that everything is going to close, and I'm only adding glue in the areas that are not going to be overhanging. So I added it more towards the center of those trees, and I'm going to do the same thing with the kangaroo, add some to the tail. Now I want to make sure that that tail is not covering the dingo's face, so I do need to kind of hold up my card panel to make sure that I have the dingo placed in a nice area that's clear of the tail, but it also gives a nice perspective with that bridge. I wanted the dingo to be up just a little bit higher. I certainly would have put my kangaroo up a little bit higher, not so close to the bottom of the card, but it ended up working out anyway. So once I get my dingo on, then I'm going to add the largest tree. For the largest tree, I wanted to make sure that I had it in the top portion of the back right, because I wanted it to stand taller than my emu. And now is a great time for me to mention the winner from my last video, Bridget Norton. Congratulations, you are the lucky winner of the Spring Gnome Die, and I will have Mary Marsh's information linked in the description box below. I want to thank you so much for supporting our channel, for all of you who have been supporting the channel. I do want to mention that we do have a blog. If you are only following us on YouTube, there is an Instagram account for the Scrappin' Cottage or CottageCutz, and we also have a blog, and we have tons of talented designers that are also inspiring with this wonderful collection. That information is in the description box below, as well as all of the products that I used today. Now I am going to clean up the back side of my card. Here you could certainly add a card base and have a tent style card base on this. I figured by adding an extra piece of cardstock to the back, not only is it going to prevent any of my writing from bleeding through or showing on the front side of my card, it also camouflages and will clean up the back side where I did get a little bit of ink. Everything is still closing nicely, and now I'm going to add a couple of clouds to the left and the right side of this card. I want to make sure that it's a little bit more balanced. I felt like the left and the right side was still a little bit plain towards the top. I want to use as much of the real estate as I possibly can, and that will complete my card for today. Thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.